I was cleaning out my desk when the text came through. I didn't even have to look at the sender to know who it was. We found a buyer. The board agreed to sell. You don't need to come in anymore. For a second, I just froze, my hands hovering over a stack of folders. My mind blinked. 5 years. 5 years of coding, pitching, sleepless nights, weekends spent in that office. Money I didn't have thrown into servers, prototypes, marketing, trying to build something real from scratch. And this text. Then I checked LinkedIn. Of course, he'd already posted. Proud to announce our exit. Teamwork makes the dream work. The post had likes, comments, and congratulations rolling in like a wave I didn't want to ride. I stared at it. Every congratulatory emoji, every amazing work comment felt like a punch in the gut. I didn't storm the office. I didn't send him a venomous email. I just leaned back in my chair, quiet, and thought. The truth, the reality of what had been going on, was catching up with me. A week before the sale, I had noticed the discrepancies. Ghost users inflating metrics, contracts with clients that didn't exist, emails from executives I had never met. Every time I asked him about them, he brushed it off with charm. Too smooth, too practiced, too believable. He'd been cooking revenue, inflating numbers, building a fantasy to make the company look like it was worth more than it was. The sale was never about the business. It was about him. So, I did what any person who had invested not just money, but trust and years of sweat equity would do. I got meticulous. I hired a forensic accountant under a quiet NDA, no fanfare. I backed up 3 encrypted servers to a cold wallet. Everything that mattered, everything that could prove the truth, I secured. I wasn't reacting emotionally. I was preparing. I set up a shell legal consult. A fake consultancy, a nominal fee, just enough to get me a seat at the buyer's due diligence table without anyone recognizing me. I walked into that meeting calm, collected, dressed in a simple suit, carrying nothing but a laptop and a folder that held everything. The auditors were polite, curious, and a little skeptical when I handed over the documents. I didn't speak much. I let the numbers do the talking. The clean books showed the real revenue, real clients, real growth. Then, discreetly, I handed over the second folder. Time-stamped evidence of the fake deals. Offshore invoices traced to his personal accounts. Wire transfers. A recorded voicemail where he bragged about flipping the firm and keeping the cash. The reaction was instant. The auditor's polite curiosity evaporated into serious attention. Phones buzzed. Emails flew. The buyer leaned back in their chair, expression unreadable, and asked for a moment to confer privately. I sat there, heart steady, watching. When they came back, the answer was the same. The deal was off. Immediately, they contacted regulators, the board, anyone who could be notified, and copied me on every email. By noon, my phone was blowing up. Investors, the board, everyone scrambling. And then, of course, him. You can't do this. His text came fast, frantic, panicked. The sale, you'll ruin us. MOM is hysterical. Pick up. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I typed one final message, calm, precise, and hit send. You already sold us out. I just made sure you'd sell yourself in public. He called after that, voice cracking, yelling, but I let it ring through to voicemail. I knew exactly what he was feeling. Panic, fear, the slow realization that the charming, confident, untouchable persona he'd built was evaporating in real time. Every offshore account, every ghost client, every fabricated email, exposed. The fantasy of success he had been living in was over. The board convened emergency meetings. Regulators called our counsel. Compliance alerts went out with his name on them. My phone kept buzzing, but I didn't pick up. There was no point in negotiating with someone who had spent 5 years lying to everyone in the room. The evidence didn't need me to explain it. The numbers, the timestamps, the recorded boasts, they were louder than any argument he could muster. I walked through the office later, quietly. Desks were cleared. The board was in a meeting room. Whispered conversations floating out under closed doors. People looked at me, confused, cautious. I didn't stop. I didn't explain. I just walked to my office, grabbed the last personal items from my drawer, and left. Calm, composed, invisible. On the way out, I passed a colleague who gave me a sideways glance. You're leaving? I just nodded. Yeah, for now. There was no more to say. I didn't need to explain. The storm I had set in motion would speak for itself. By evening, the regulators had started audits. Emails were being sent to every party involved. The board's emergency meeting leaked to select investors. His name was appearing in alerts, reports, and internal compliance notices. And me? I sat back, poured a drink, and finally let myself breathe. The anger was still there, sure, but it was tempered by the calm satisfaction of having done the right thing. Not for revenge, not for ego, but for justice. I didn't post on LinkedIn. I didn't brag. I didn't tell anyone. The clean books, the evidence, and the truth had already done the work. And for the first time in weeks, I slept without waking up in a cold sweat, replaying lies, false numbers, and betrayal. The next morning, my phone was a war zone. Texts, missed calls, emails, dozens, all frantic. Investors asking for explanations. The board demanding to know who had leaked what. And, of course, him, blowing up every channel he could find. You're insane. Pick up. MOM is panicking. This isn't over. Stop this now. I didn't respond. I never responded. He didn't understand what was happening. He thought he could charm his way out of everything, manipulate, gaslight, and it would all smooth over. But charm doesn't hold up against evidence, timestamps, and offshore account wire trails. The regulators called first thing. My counsel forwarded the emails to me, eyes wide behind glasses. Every line, every timestamp, every invoice I had meticulously archived was being scrutinized by real professionals. People whose job was to dismantle scams like his. And he had built one. A house of cards, fake deals, inflated revenue, offshore transfers, and empty promises. The board convened emergency meetings. I didn't attend. I didn't need to. My shell consultancy had already positioned me at the table the previous day. My evidence was in the right hands, and the chaos would unfold exactly as it should. By the time anyone realized it, he was already cornered. I poured another coffee and sat back in my apartment. The city was waking up, cars humming, people commuting, while I watched everything I had built and he had tried to destroy turn the corner in real time. There was a strange satisfaction in it. Not revenge, not triumph, but precision. The truth was untouchable. The facts were undeniable. He had nowhere to hide. Then the calls from him got personal. You don't understand. You're going to ruin everyone. The sale, it's collapsing because of you. MOM, she's hysterical. Pick up. I scrolled through the messages, seeing the panic drip from every word. It was almost poetic. 5 years of charm, bribes, and lies, now crumbling under the weight of evidence. I typed one final message. Short, cold. You already sold us out. I just made sure you'd sell yourself in public. No reply. Of course not. He had nothing left to say. By midday, news had started leaking to certain investors, carefully, by design. Anonymous briefings explaining that the due diligence revealed inconsistencies, fraudulent revenue streams, offshore accounts, ghost contracts. The name of the co-founder who had flipped the firm and kept the cash appeared on compliance alerts and internal auditor memos. I didn't need to brag or post screenshots. The storm had its own momentum. I went into the office briefly, under the guise of finalizing some personal files. People stared, whispered. Nobody stopped me. I walked calmly past the open-plan desks, my laptop bag in hand, collecting nothing but personal belongings. Everything that mattered, the encrypted backups, forensic accountant reports, time-stamped evidence, was already in secure hands. In the boardroom, murmurs floated out under closed doors. I didn't stop, didn't wave, didn't explain. My presence alone was a calm contradiction to the panic spreading through the office. I had chosen my battles weeks ago. This wasn't about drama. It wasn't about yelling matches or public humiliation. It was about accountability. By the evening, the regulators had already begun audits. Emails were flying back and forth. Internal compliance systems were flagging his name, tracing every wire, every fabricated invoice, every ghost client. He wasn't untouchable anymore. His charm didn't matter. His lies didn't matter. Only facts mattered, and I had given them everything. His panic escalated. Another round of texts. Stop. You're ruining US. Pick up. The board. The investors. You don't understand. This was supposed to be clean. This was supposed to be easy. I didn't respond. Not once. Instead, I made a spreadsheet. Cross-referenced every offshore account, every falsified revenue report, every email thread. Checked timestamps, verified signatures, double-checked bank transfers. It wasn't for the regulators, they had it all. It was for me. To ensure that when the dust settled, I could look back and know I had done everything meticulously, legally, and flawlessly. By nightfall, the board was calling emergency sessions, investors were demanding explanations, and he was nowhere to be found. His charm, his bravado, his promises, all evaporated in the cold light of evidence. I didn't need to gloat. I didn't need attention. The storm was self-sustaining. I finally sat back, coffee in hand, staring out the window at the city lights. Everything was moving now. Evidence, accountability, consequences, all flowing in real time. And me? I was calm, not triumphant, not angry, just composed. For the first time in weeks, I let myself breathe. The man who had lied, manipulated, and tried to sell our company under false pretenses was finally exposed. The regulators, the board, the buyers, they were handling the rest. I didn't have to lift a finger beyond preparation and precision. And somewhere deep down, I felt the smallest flicker of relief. Not because I had won, but because I had acted with integrity when it counted most. The panic, the chaos, the unraveling of lies. It was a storm I had anticipated, and I was finally standing in the calm at its center. By the third day, the chaos had reached a level even I hadn't fully anticipated. Regulators were calling, emails flying from compliance officers, auditors requesting meetings. His name was everywhere in red alerts, flagged in corporate compliance software, and already the internal investigation had begun tracing offshore accounts and fake invoices. I stayed off social media entirely. No need to post updates, no need to signal my involvement. Everything I had done, carefully documented, time-stamped, and handed over, was working. The truth didn't need amplification. The facts themselves were making the storm. Meanwhile, he was imploding. Texts, calls, emails, some from blocked numbers, all frantic. You can't do this. The board, the investors. This was supposed to close. She's freaking out. Pick up. I read them, one by one, and didn't respond. Not once. Every desperate word, every panic-laced line, made the picture clearer. The fantasy life he had spun, the smooth-talking, charming co-founder, the one everyone admired, was unraveling in real time. He had built the company on illusions, on inflated metrics and fake contracts, and now every lie was laid bare. The board convened emergency sessions. Investors demanded explanations. Emails to regulatory agencies confirmed that every transaction, every offshore transfer, every ghost client was being investigated. The audit trail I had provided was airtight. There was nothing to manipulate, no charm to leverage, no excuses to spin. I went into the office again, this time to gather a few personal items and finalize my exit. The space felt strange. Desks that had once buzzed with energy were quiet, the usual chatter replaced by hushed conversations, sidelong glances. People whispered as I passed, clearly confused but careful not to ask questions. I didn't offer explanations. I didn't need to. The storm had its own rhythm now. By late morning, I received a call from the buyer's legal team. They wanted to confirm that all documents and evidence had been provided. I answered, calmly walking through the folders, time-stamped evidence, offshore invoices, emails, and voicemail recordings. My words were measured, deliberate. They didn't need emotion, they needed facts. And the facts were undeniable. After the call, I sat back in my apartment, staring out at the skyline. The city moved on, unaware of the collapse happening behind closed doors. Regulators, the board, auditors, buyers, all in motion, acting on the truth I had delivered. I let myself sip coffee slowly, a small moment of calm amidst the whirlwind I had unleashed. His panic escalated. Another round of frantic texts. You can't do this. The sale, it's ruined. Is losing it. Pick up. This isn't fair. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Every plea, every outburst, was another confirmation that my meticulous preparation had stripped him of control. By the afternoon, news had started trickling to select investors. Carefully anonymized briefings outlining irregularities in due diligence, offshore transfers, and ghost revenue streams began circulating. His name was being flagged internally at multiple firms. Compliance alerts were active, and auditors were combing through every single transaction he had touched. I sat back, reviewing emails from my forensic accountant. Every cross-check had been verified, every timestamp corroborated, every offshore account traced. I didn't feel triumphant, just satisfied. Not satisfaction born of ego or revenge, but of seeing order restored. Truth, once obscured, now dominated. Later, a colleague from the office reached out cautiously. "I heard everything," she said, voice low, unsure if I wanted to talk. I nodded minimally. "Everything's being handled," I replied. No elaboration. The storm was bigger than any one conversation. My job wasn't to explain it. My job was to ensure accountability, and that had been done. By evening, the board issued statements confirming audits. Regulators were drafting formal inquiries, and his name had begun appearing on official compliance alerts. Emails from investors were frantic, confirming meetings and reviewing documentation. He was cornered, completely exposed, and there was no escaping it. Not charm, not panic, not excuses. Nothing could undo what had been set in motion. I walked through the office one last time before leaving, taking only my personal items. Everyone stared, silent and wary. I didn't speak. I didn't explain. I didn't need to. My presence was enough. The storm was happening, and I was simply observing it unfold. That night, I sat in my apartment, reviewing the encrypted backups, ensuring all records were complete. Clean books, time-stamped evidence, offshore invoices, recorded voicemails, all organized, all verified. The preparation that had taken weeks now felt worth it. I had acted with precision, with patience, and without ego. The consequences were out of my hands, but undeniable. For the first time, I allowed myself to feel the faintest flicker of relief. Not victory, not triumph, but clarity. I had taken everything he had manipulated, every false metric, every fake contract, every wire transfer, and exposed it fully. The chaos wasn't mine, it was his. And the truth had its way. By the end of the day, I realized something important. The storm was self-sustaining. Every person who needed to know the truth was now in motion, every regulatory and corporate mechanism responding as it should. My work had been precise, methodical, and deliberate. I could finally step back and let consequences play out without interference. And for the first time since receiving that text, I slept. Not restless, not haunted, not panicked. Calm. Because I had acted, prepared, and ensured that the truth, not lies, not charm, not manipulation, dominated the narrative. By the fourth day, the intensity had ramped up beyond anything I had anticipated. Regulators were calling nonstop, auditors were digging into every account, and the board was in back-to-back emergency sessions. Every misstep, every fabricated contract, every offshore wire transfer he had orchestrated was being flagged, analyzed, and documented, and all of it traced back to him. His panic was palpable even through text. "You can't do this. MOM is freaking out. The board, the investors. Pick up." Every message was frantic, a mix of pleading and accusation. But I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Words couldn't undo the evidence. The facts were louder than anything he could scream or type. Investors started calling me directly. Short, clipped questions. "What's going on with the sale? Were these numbers accurate?" I answered calmly, factually, referencing the documentation I had provided. There was no emotion, no editorializing. Just numbers, dates, and proof. I could hear the realization dawning on them. The discrepancy between what he had reported and what actually existed. The auditors requested additional meetings to cross-check timestamps and account transfers. I provided them, quietly, meticulously, without a hint of judgment. My goal was never to humiliate him, though it was unavoidable. My goal was to ensure the truth was undeniable and that no one could manipulate, fudge, or spin it. Meanwhile, the board's emergency meetings leaked internally. Investors were scrambling, asking for explanations, demanding calls with compliance officers. And the buyer, the one he thought he could charm and coerce, had paused all communications. They weren't interested in excuses or apologies. They were only interested in the truth, and they had it. I spent the morning reviewing my own work, double-checking the cold wallet backups, verifying timestamps, and confirming that every email, voicemail, and financial trail was accounted for. Every piece of evidence I had amassed was airtight. There was no room for negotiation, no loophole, no charm to slip through. By afternoon, news began trickling to select investors. Carefully worded briefings highlighted irregularities in due diligence, offshore accounts, and inflated revenue streams. His name was starting to appear on internal compliance alerts across multiple firms. Panic spread through the office like wildfire. I watched quietly, sipping coffee, letting the storm I had set in motion unfold without interference. Then came the calls from him. Desperate, pleading, angry. "You're destroying everything. Pick up. This sale, it's ruined. She's losing it." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Every plea, every panic-laced text confirmed what I already knew. His fantasy of control had evaporated. The house of cards he had built with charm, lies, and fabricated numbers was collapsing under the weight of proof. The board convened yet another emergency session. Emails flew from auditors, compliance officers, and investors. The offshore transfers were being traced. Fake contracts were flagged. Every ghost client was being questioned. The man who had tried to charm his way to an exit was being exposed completely, systematically. I went into the office briefly to collect the last of my personal items. The space felt strange, quiet, tense, almost empty. Colleagues looked at me sideways, whispered. I didn't explain. I didn't need to. The storm had its own momentum now. My presence was merely a reminder of the calm precision behind the chaos. Later, the buyer's legal team reached out to confirm all evidence had been handed over and verified. I walked them through the folders, the timestamps, the offshore invoices, and the voicemail where he had bragged about flipping the firm and keeping the cash. I didn't elaborate, didn't editorialize, didn't gloat. Facts were enough. They confirmed, thanked me, and ended the call. By evening, the regulatory agencies were drafting formal inquiries. Internal compliance alerts were live. Investors were convening their own emergency discussions. Emails flooded my inbox, forwarding evidence, asking questions, confirming audits. His panic had reached its peak. There was no charm, no spin, no deception left to lean on. The consequences were unfolding exactly as they should. I sat in my apartment, reviewing the encrypted backups one final time. Clean books, time-stamped evidence, offshore invoices, recorded voicemails. All organized, all verified, all ready. I felt a strange calm, almost alien after the past week of stress and betrayal. Not triumph, not satisfaction, just clarity. I had acted methodically, legally, precisely. The storm was outside my control now, but its trajectory was exactly what I had intended. Late that night, I walked the city streets alone. Streetlights reflected off wet pavement from an earlier drizzle. Cars hummed past. The city felt indifferent to the chaos I had unleashed. But that didn't matter. I had done everything within my power. He was exposed. Regulators, board members, investors, all were reacting appropriately. The consequences were in motion, and I could finally step back. For the first time, I felt a flicker of relief. Not victory, not revenge, not triumph, just calm. I had faced betrayal, manipulation, and deceit head-on, and I had acted with integrity. The storm I had anticipated had arrived. I had survived it. And now, finally, I could breathe. By the fifth day, the collapse was total. His name was on every internal compliance alert, every flagged email, every regulator report. Investors were calling non-stop, demanding explanations, and the board was holding emergency sessions around the clock. The buyer had paused everything, refusing to continue until the investigation was complete. I stayed out of it mostly. I didn't post on LinkedIn. I didn't gloat. I didn't respond to his frantic calls or texts. The evidence was doing all the work. Clean books, time-stamped emails, offshore invoices, and a voicemail where he bragged about flipping the firm. Everything had been meticulously documented and delivered to the right hands. And now the consequences were unfolding exactly as they should. He tried one last-ditch effort to reach me. "You don't understand. Pick up. The sale, it's ruined. She's freaking out. This isn't fair." I didn't answer. I let the phone buzz until it went silent. Every plea, every panicked message, only confirmed what I already knew. Charm and lies were powerless against truth backed by evidence. By mid-morning, the board's statement went out to investors. The company's due diligence revealed irregularities in reported revenue, fabricated contracts, and offshore transfers tied to a single individual. Regulators were notified. Auditors had begun formal investigations. Internal compliance flagged his name. He had no escape. Investors were furious. Calls poured in, demanding full transparency. Emails requested copies of documents, cross-checks, and confirmations. I forwarded everything I had to the buyer's legal team, the forensic accountants, and the regulators. Each file was carefully annotated. Every date, every transfer, every fake contract, every ghost client, fully traceable. There was no wiggle room, no loophole. Meanwhile, I went into the office one last time, under the pretext of clearing out personal items. The place was quiet, tense. Colleagues whispered, curious, but didn't approach. I collected only what was mine. The servers, backups, and evidence were already secure. I didn't explain anything. The storm was self-sustaining now. By afternoon, regulators escalated. Emails and calls confirmed that the fraudulent accounts and offshore transfers were being traced, contracts were being invalidated, and internal audits were being expanded. His panic had reached a fever pitch. Texts from him slowed, then stopped. He was trapped in the consequences he had spent years trying to evade. I finally allowed myself a moment of reflection. 5 years of work, poured into a company, almost lost to someone else's charm and deception, had been preserved. Not through confrontation, not through shouting, not through revenge, but through meticulous preparation, patience, and precision. I hadn't needed to confront him directly. I hadn't needed to storm the office or post publicly. The evidence did the work for me. Late that evening, I sat in my apartment, reviewing the cold wallet, the encrypted backups, and all documentation one last time. Everything was accounted for. Clean books, time-stamped evidence, offshore invoices, recorded voicemail. Perfect. Complete. Untouchable. I thought about him for a moment. Not with anger, not with gloating, not with regret, just with clarity. The person I had trusted to build a company with, the co-founder I had spent years supporting and believing in, had tried to manipulate the entire system for personal gain. He had gambled with investors' money, my savings, and the company's future, and he had lost. Consequences had finally caught up. The final blow came 2 days later. The buyer's legal team sent a confirmation. They had provided all evidence to regulators, the board, and investors. The sale was permanently canceled. Investigations had begun. His professional reputation, carefully curated for years, was shattered. And for me, I had ensured that the truth prevailed without ever stooping to theatrics. I didn't celebrate. I didn't announce victory. I simply walked the city streets, coffee in hand, reflecting on the past week. The city was indifferent to the chaos that had unfolded within its walls. Cars hummed past. Lights reflected on wet pavement. People moved about their lives, unaware of the collapse I had orchestrated behind the scenes. By nightfall, my phone was silent. Investors were coordinating with regulators directly. The board was managing the fallout. Auditors were finalizing reports. And he was nowhere to be found, scrambling privately, trapped in the mess he had created. There was no charm, no excuses, no spin left. Only consequences. I finally slept through the night. Not triumphant, not vindicated, not even happy, just calm, peaceful. The storm I had anticipated had arrived, and I had survived it. My work had been precise, methodical, and unrelenting. Accountability had been delivered. Truth had been preserved. And for the first time in years, I could breathe without fear, without panic, without betrayal weighing on my shoulders. Weeks later, I resumed my life quietly. I focused on new projects, reconnected, and for me, that was enough. Not revenge, not spectacle, not satisfaction, just clarity.